Hello. I'm appalled by news, initially from a man called Denis Krivosheyev, who's the Asian director of Amnesty International. And he said that it is no longer appropriate to recognize Alexei Navalny as a prisoner of conscience. I'm afraid this is not good news. This is in the light of things that Navalny has said in the past that significantly he has not retracted. I should point out these things have been circulating for a while and are certainly worrying. But the fact that someone's past is littered with public statements that are worrying does not make the present situation any the less dramatic or itself worrying. I wouldn't condone any form of racism, anti-Semitism or overzealous nationalism, and I have faced a lot of trolling in the last few weeks by people who seem unwilling to accept that there is a valid distinction to be drawn between what someone might have said in the past or what they might have done or be on record for saying and what they are now facing. There is a distinction between the present and the past. I think it's also inappropriate to transfer our cultural norms, the norms of Western Europe, elsewhere, or indeed to transfer cultural norms from one country to another. It is certainly inappropriate to do this historically. Things change, and I hope people mellow. And things that people may have done in the past, I hope they regret. It doesn't necessarily mean one has to run around the place saying, I no longer wish to be considered to have said this. What I worry about most is that this story demonstrates a disturbing role for Amnesty International, to present Amnesty International as the arbiter of history. In fact, this is accompanied by a history on Amnesty's part of very worrying activity. I myself personally witnessed some very dodgy behaviour abroad by people acting for the local Amnesty International national office. And I wrote to the director in London about this some years ago. I thought this was very significant. I know there have been other scandals more recently. Organisations and individuals may stand up for something important, and this is valid and right, but they can rarely claim the sort of infallibility that is projected on them. People make mistakes. The mistakes that people make in the past does not invalidate the correct things they are doing now. Only one person or institution, in fact, has ever laid claim to absolute infallibility, and then in very specific circumstances, and that itself, the doctrine of the infallibility of the Pope, is subject to much criticism both from within and outside the Catholic Church. Navalny has never claimed to be infallible. He is far from perfect. But he is certainly a prisoner of conscience. Just as much as Nelson Mandela, before him, was a prisoner of conscience. And I think the comparison bears merit. This is not perceived as a technical issue, for example, by the world media, but as a vindication of the huge efforts made by Russian propaganda, some of which I have personally experienced, and some of which, incidentally, is in very persuasive English. But defending something is not whitewashing their past. And recognizing an injustice is not minimized by admitting that people are imperfect. In the same way that the fact that I have criticized aspects of European policy does not make me anti-European. nor in criticising or reporting some of the observations of Navalny does that make me anti-Russian or contra Putin. You have to be really careful that simply because somebody is taking a position that other people are taking and acting with a sort of herd mentality, that doesn't mean we embrace the whole of the of that stuff that the herd want to follow. This is actually fundamentally this hits at some of the criticism that is being directed against the woke movement. There are many things in that movement that are good. There are many things that are not so good, but you don't necessarily need to embrace the whole thing. This is not a political party. This is not a religious organisation. You don't need to take on board everything to be able to point out that something is right or something is wrong. I simply think that Navalny's criticisms need addressing honestly. The poisoning needs to be explained rather than dismissed. And a wholesale reform of modern Russia, as well as modern Europe, and probably the UK, is long overdue. This is where we should focus. The more these issues are handled with irrelevant tittle-tattle and salacious historical revelations, the less likely it is that we can foster reform. It doesn't make those revelations insignificant. It doesn't make that historical storytelling unimportant. It just means that is not the focus at the moment. The focus at the moment is improving our lives. Amnesty UK emerges from that point of view as a foul player in this drama, as foul as any of the other miscreants. And I'm afraid today, moving away from their previous position, which was to see the past statements by Navalny as, and I quote, irrelevant to the current political persecution. In moving away from this statement, Amnesty is wrong. And it has shown a very wicked desire to power play in this drama at exactly the point when Mr. Navalny is being sent off to a penal colony. This is mistimed as it is misintentioned and misdirected. This is foolishness in the extreme played on the world stage. Statements more than this, statements, all the statements which are relevant have been readily available. Most of them admittedly in Russian, but they have been readily available, and many of them on YouTube. Statements do not become worse with repetition, and they have not become more or less accessible, in fact, since the 6th of January. Anyone who has followed this story, as I have, will have been aware of the articles of Katya Kazbek, of the torrent of allegations about Navalny's links to MI5, MI6 and the CIA. I think much of this is just fantasy. But they will also, they cannot have ignored the actual charge which has been brought against Navalny, which is that he tarnished the image of a World War II veteran. And all of this is part of a targeted campaign to discredit Navalny and his work and to draw attention away from the serious issues, the desire for reform, the vocalizing of some sort of opposition, and concerns about the abuse of power and the abuse of nerve agents and poisons. I think, this is my personal opinion, that if this does not lead directly to the Kremlin, it leads to a need to explain why security around the protection of these illegal nerve agents has collapsed. Well, one or other of these explanations is needed. But evasion and misdirection is not the way forward. Misdirection, frankly, is the stuff of a magic show. It's the stuff of reality television. It's not the stuff of proper life. We have gone beyond the point where our world leaders are people who have emerged from reality television. We are growing up, and we need to take responsibility for our actions. Do by all means subscribe, leave your comments. As you will know, I will answer everything, even if I don't agree with it. I will answer it. I very much enjoy getting into debate with people. But do, by all means, please answer, and also observe the sort of good nature of the YouTube site and be polite.